All righty, everyone. I want to go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Mitchell Holzer. I want to welcome everybody to the biweekly edition of Ask the Doctor. We're super excited to be able to bring some education, different background regarding medical grade CBD. I know there's a lot of shops that have popped up, a lot of different offerings, and we'll kind of get into a little bit how we're different as a company. So we have our two medical doctors. We have Dr. Nick Jasani, who's a board certified oncologist with us, and then also Nimish Patel, who is a board certified internal medicine specialist. So great to have them. I know we have a couple of new folks here that are joining, taking a look at the company, just getting some additional information on our firm, and so we want to welcome them. And as we get started, I guess we can just go ahead, open it up to both of the docs. We'll start with Dr. Jasani first, just a little bit about your background and then your entry, how you got started into the CBD cannabis space, and we'll take it from there. Okay, so take it away, Nick.
Sure. Thank you, Mitchell. Good evening, everyone. A little bit about myself. I'm a practicing clinical oncologist. That means I typically just see patients on a full-time basis. Really started to kind of enter this field as my patients were bringing these products to me. Many of them take various supplements, and this was one of them 3 to 4 years ago as the hemp bill started passing and the farm bill, and you started seeing more and more of these products in the community. We've done a pretty deep dive into this to really learn the research, the literature. I also prescribe cannabis for the Texas cannabis program for some of my patients. So I am registered as one of the Texas cannabis physicians. And, a lot of this kind of dealt with safety because I had to figure out what my patients could take. And that kind of led to finding, why people were coming back. Efficacy with this in terms of sleep and anxiety relief and pain and a few other ailments that we'll talk about. And that kind of led me to these products. And, we've gotten pretty versatile with this over the last few years. And I think the research is only starting to now start to increase. And it's still not there until there's complete deregulation, but there will be a plethora of research coming in the future, fine-tuning how we use these products in clinical medicine. At least right now it is a plant-based supplement, and that's the most important thing. Wellness Biosciences has extremely high quality products, and we'll go into that a little later on how they third-party test and what differentiates their products from other people's products as well. You want to take it back over, Mitchell?
Yeah. So a little background about myself. I'm a practicing internal medicine physician in North Houston, Woodlands, Conroe area, probably for the last 17 years. How I got into this space partly relates to my family and my mom, who's been dealing with Parkinson's, but it was through my journey of practice of medicine and dealing with end of life and senescence and hospice care that, we realized when we were building or developing that company, a lot of the individuals we were caring for were struggling with polypharmacy, and they were struggling with pain management aspects, and their family members would migrate to Colorado and other locations to get them compounds that contain CBD and THC to be a significant relief. Well, as a process of us migrating out of hospice and selling that company, we were approached by a private equity company to research these compounds back in 2015. We just felt it was too early. It was kind of helter-skelter, unregulated, and really things haven't changed much, but they've narrowed, and the scope of where we're heading is getting more clear. And in 18, late 18, early 19, that farm bill passed, which kind of deregulated it from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 5, which kind of made it more accessible. So I think everyone jumped head first into it without realizing that these are things that we're putting into our system, and they need to follow the same regulations that a pharmaceutical company would follow. And we've took the initiative to do that, myself, as well as a group of other physicians and a colleague of mine that started this hospital company, utilized the ability to get a license in Oklahoma and actually study these compounds and understand the regulatory component of what's involved, right? So, we're getting closer and closer. If you look back, probably about 3 weeks ago, last week of July, the Senate actually put a bill out to deregulate THC from a federal level. So I think it's getting closer. I think what we're ultimately going to see is the state go back and forth and fight the federal government on a taxation standpoint. But these compounds have an exceptional benefit. I utilized it on my mom. She suffers from Parkinson's, primarily tremor-based. She does have some cognitive deficits at times, but she was getting more and more frustrated with the what we call hospital medicine and the polypharmacy component we deal with. And she ultimately came to myself and my sister and said, hey, what else can I utilize? I've been to multiple neurologists. My symptoms aren't getting better. I'm in a fog. I really just want, quality of life and symptom relief and sleep and rest and everything else. And so I ended up getting her some Rick Simpson oil and tried some other compounds. And, at that time, Barry was starting this company up. And I said, hey, Barry, the one thing I advise you before I support you is do the right thing. Take your time, expend as much capital as you need to, pretend that this is a regulated industry and do it like the FDA would. So I think that puts us head and shoulders above a lot of the other companies that are out there. I think you're seeing the squeeze occur presently where you're seeing more and more regulations fall into place, be it labeling, be it, the total percentage or content of CBD in these compounds, that you're going to see that trend continue to occur more and more, because I think, like Dr. Jasani said, a lot of my patients approach me with alternative treatment modalities from a standpoint of, hey, doc, I'm using ashwagandha for my stress, or doc, I'm using turmeric for my arthritic pain. And I think CBD has those ranks ever since the Farm Bill's passed. And, I think Barry and the rest of the team here do an exceptional job on following not only what Dr. Jasani and myself state, but what regulatory is about to occur. So that's a little synopsis about myself.
Okay, perfect. And then I guess first question, it's kind of a basic, cannabis, let's call it 101 question. We'll go ahead with you, Dr. Jasani. If you could just tell the difference between, what is the difference between CBD and THC?
Yeah, so they're all cannabinoids. And remember, the cannabis plant has over 115 different cannabinoids. It has flavonoids. It has hundreds of terpenes in it. So cannabinoids are what we're talking about. The most abundant ones in the cannabis plant is THC, which is mainly psychoactive. And then there's CBD. But after those two highest volume cannabinoids, there's bunches of other ones at smaller volume, CBG, CBN, and it goes on and on. And now science is starting to identify each one of these have different physiologic properties. They result in different changes in the body. They work on similar downstream receptors, and they're in varying concentrations of the cannabis plant. So that's, and in the medically legal or recreationally legal states, you will see a lot of THC-based products combined with CBD. More CBD you have, the more you mute the psychoactive effects of THC, but you also get the medicinal benefits.
All right, thank you. And then we have a question here. Again, a little bit general in nature, but it says, tell me about the CBD tablets. How do you describe it to others who are curious? I guess, Dr. if you want to go ahead and take that one, Dr. Patel.
And I think Dr. Jasani does a great job of explaining, you have to understand what these compounds work on and what system we have internally on that. So, I'll let Nick kind of talk about the endocannabinoid system and how it functions and kind of uses its receptors we have to give functional relief on certain ailments.
Yeah, that's basically how they work, is they work on the downstream receptor. And when you look at these balanced capsules, those are broad spectrum. They have CBD. They have, when you see broad spectrum, they have the other terpenes, which are the hydrocarbons that come with the plant that have a lot of synergy in something called the entourage effect. So they work with CBD to cause different various downstream effects in the body, from anxiety, stress and mild well-being relief, mild pain, sometimes spasm. Sometimes it helps with sleep. And the reason is combined with those terpenes and the CBD product. So that's how the balance pills are. The metered is fast absorbing. It's absorbed through the mucosa in your mouth. So it is not being absorbed when you swallow it. You're getting it in your mouth, so it gets in pretty fast into the bloodstream. So the bioavailability is what the difference is.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. Also, a question that always comes up. I know we have a couple of new folks that are joining us, taking a look at the company. You know, from your perspective, Dr. Patel, what makes WBRx Wellness Biosciences different than what you see, you know, with these shops that are popping up on the side of the highway and gas stations?
Yeah, and I think it's the perspective of what Bree and the rest of the individuals that started this company follow. And it's exactly what myself and Dr. Giussani want, is do no harm, right? So we as physicians are trained from day one that anything you do, even if you don't know the answer, do no harm. And these compounds are still early in its infancy. This endocannabinoid system was just founded in the late 90s or early 90s. Per se, there's a lot of data on how CBD, THC, CBG, CBN, and all these other compounds function. And there's actually double-blinded studies, but they're all European-based, they're Israel-based. So the reason what makes WBRx or Wellness Bioscience unique is they strive for that protection and guidance of regulatory importance, right? There is no regulations on labeling. There is no regulations on how much CBD is actually in the compound. So you can go to any corner store or CVS or wherever, but if you see that label that says 100 milligrams or 500 milligrams, how do you know truly that's what's in there? So, you know, Barry and the company actually strive and do not only internal testing of what's in these compounds, but they do third-party testing. So before it goes out to the consumer, very similar to if you're a USDA or FDA or a large-scale company, you want to provide products that are safe, and that's the first utmost importance. You have to understand, like Dr. Giussani said, this is a plant, okay? So there are a lot of struggles for this plant. It is not easy to grow. There are different ways to grow. So there is no regulation how people grow it. Some grow it outside, some grow it in hoop houses, some grow it indoors, some grow it in their backyards. Because there's no regulations, there's so much contaminants that can occur along the way. Right? Did someone overwater it so there's mold? Did someone underwater it that there's heavy metals? It's a sticky plant. That is the compound people don't understand, that there are no regulations. So I can go create a corner store and pop a label on and say it's CBD, but it may be snake water and may not contain any CBD. And I know there's been many articles on it. Hey, if I take 10 products and I test the actual amount of CBD in some of them, 8 out of the 10 will probably not follow strict guidelines or standards that we expect. Just like if you walk into a store and you expect to take ibuprofen or Tylenol or acetaminophen, you hope that when it says 200 milligrams, that's exactly what you're getting and not 2,000 milligrams, so you bleed to death. That is the whole basis. These are literally drugs, right? So they're very similar to anything I would get over the counter. And I think the company goes above and beyond to putting those regulations into place, like we were regulated by the FDA, like we were regulated by the USDA. And I think that's what makes us unique, and I think that's what people rely on. And I think when you follow the standard, the product sells itself, right? So I think you try it or you sample it, people do see a component of, hey, I saw some relief or I felt some relief. Again, and Dr. Jasani will stress this, I do, saying, this is not curative. It does not cure cancer. It does not cure arthritis. It does not cure stress, okay? Those are all underlying ailments that have secondary components that you have to deal with. But this helps with quality of life and reducing symptoms, which are key. Improving sleep, reducing mild anxiolytic symptoms, mild arthritic symptoms. And that is what a lot of my elderly patients are looking for, right? I'm an internist, so most of my patients are 80, 90, and even into the hundreds. And they are the ones approaching me on these compounds because they've done their own research and they're tired of the hydrocodones and the narcos and the tramadols and the Vicodins and these prescription-based medicines that kind of put them into a fog and increase their risk of, sleep deprivation component or falling risk from a standpoint of fracturing their hip or even constipation with narcotics. So I think that's my sense on what makes wellness quite different from what you may find at the corner store.
Gotcha. And let me ask you, I know you made some great points there, Dr. Patel. What percentage of folks, I know you did a great job of showing how we're doing the multiple testing, having the certificate of analysis. What percentage of the companies out there now offering CBD do you think go through this rigorous process? What would you say the percentage is in what you've studied and what you've seen out in the marketplace, if you had to?
I think if you go year over year, when the Farm Bill passed, it was probably less than 5%. And then if you incrementally go in that year, it's probably gone from 5% probably to 15%. So there's still a significant amount of companies out there that, again, there's no one regulating them. So why do I need to pay the extra money to get a certificate of analysis or to go through that process if I'm not regulated and I can still sell the same product?
Yes.
Yeah, it's costly and it slows your supply chain. So you would only do it, if it made sense, and it makes sense because it's an unregulated product. So the quality makes of utmost importance when you're ingesting this.
Yeah, and so they test these by the batches, and just to give our audience an idea, what is the cost that you see it as to test these batches currently right now in the market?
I wouldn't know offhand, but I can give you an example from what we do in Oklahoma standpoint, and obviously that includes THC component to it. We probably expend almost $6,000 to $8,000 every 2 weeks on testing, and you have to do it in small batches. You can only do, I think, and the regulations are changing by the day. I think it's now 25 pounds, so you have to do it in smaller and smaller batches. Nick, you may know better from a CBD standpoint or nationwide.
No, I think that's right. Barry has the numbers for the batch.
Yeah,
but
I was just going to say I can speak directly to the lab that we use in Florida, ACS, out of Fort Myers, and it started off at a little under 800. Now it's a little over 900 per batch. So every time you have a new batch, they test sample products from that batch, and then they determine, what it is. And so if you have, let's say, meter plus, and then sleep, that's over $1,800 as an example.
And remember, with the testing, what's unique is agriculture, you're testing for heavy metals and pesticides, but in cannabis, it's like 1,000 times more stringent. So the levels have gone, you would pass this in agricultural easily. But in cannabis, they've made it so stringent. It's 1,000 times more in dosing, in levels of insecticide and heavy metals, partly because you're processing these products. When you process it, you concentrate it. So imagine what type of cultivation and processing you have to meet those requirements. Well, if 80% are testing, and it's such stringent requirements, that should give you pause.
OSHA is the standard that they follow as far as the testing goes. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
awesome. Yeah, I mean,
I think what's exactly occurred is what the government or the state or whoever expected. They opened it up so it would get flooded. Now they're going in, creating regulations to create consolidation. And you often see that in other industries and other businesses, and only the strong survive. And I think that's what we've been pushing to Barry and the leadership day one, that, hey, follow the herd, be your own unique individual company. Even if it takes you longer to get to that success rate, you will last longer and survive the consolidation that's coming.
You both may know this, but I've looked at the retention rate of the customers that are referred to us by all of our docs, and I'm sure both of you know this as well, that they continue to buy because they depend on the quality more than they do anything else. They want to make sure that they're not using something that, you know, is just out. So the retention rate, I connect directly to the adherence of quality.
Well, and I think part of the issue too, Barry, is I'll give you a case in point in my clinic, right? So I get patients that often will come in with vitamins and minerals and CBD turmeric and everything else, but they automatically assume it's safe, right? Because they were able to get it from a CVS or a Walgreens or a Kroger or whatever store. But until you go through and explain it to them that, hey, these aren't regulated and there is no testing requirements, do you even know what's in it? It shocks them. They're really dumbified that, no, this is not like my regular Tylenol that I can just go pick up and trust. I'm like, nah, that's not how this world works in this industry. So yeah, you probably see that too, Nick.
Oh yeah, constantly.
all right. I got, yeah, great information here. So I've got another couple of questions. You know, one, just at a high level, is CBD FDA approved? And part two to that, do you need a prescription for the doctors to offer it?
No.
You don't need a prescription.
You don't need a prescription. It's not FDA approved.
Okay. And then what do you guys sense? Again, I know Dr. Patel, you guys both are there on the front lines as far as well, some of the legislation, but what is the time frame? It's not FDA approved right now, but what the $64,000 question is, when, I think there was a comment earlier, but when do you see it getting approved by the FDA? Ballpark.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a federal question, right? So when you see the deregulation occur, unfortunately, the federal government and the Farm Bill deregulated it, but they didn't assign it to an agency, right? So they should have assigned it to either the FDA or the USDA, or, you know, this is a consumer-based product, right? So unfortunately, there is no regulations because there's no studies, right? And they couldn't do studies because it wasn't it was a controlled substance, right? So you can't really do studies on controlled substances. There was only one university in all of the US, which was University of Mississippi, that was actually doing studies on the compounds, both CBD and THC, from a national level for several years for deregulation and for the federal government. So you had to go get the compounds from there. You had to follow their rules and everything else, which, you know, I think you're seeing more and more studies occur in the US. And I think as they get a conglomerate of enough data is when you're going to see the FDA jump in, you know, and I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't know if that's 24 months out or 48 months out, you know. Nick, your thoughts?
Yeah, same. I mean, we don't know. I think they are going to come in soon just because there's so many products. At least help classify, is it a dietary supplement, should it be food? Because, you know, people are incorporating it in all kinds of things. So I think they're feeling that they're going to have to regulate this. So hopefully sooner than later.
Let me ask you guys, just piggybacking on that, how do you feel? You know, we talked about how we're a little bit different, investing, having the multiple testing, certificate of analysis. Do you think that that's going to make a big difference when the FDA comes out? Will there be certain standards that companies are going to have to adhere to? And how does that benefit WBRx, if you could speak to that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? So you've already created the foundation and framework. So when someone, excuse my language, but lifts the skirt up to see what the company is about, they're going to see everything that they've done from day one. But what can you tell regulations are going to do? Regulations are going to put a cost burden, right? Because you're now going to have to pay an exponential amount of more money to go through testing. And a lot of these companies are like, well, my cost margin and my profit component were already borderline. Why go through that component? That's where you're going to see the consolidation. So those companies that hadn't followed those, they already know it's a short runway for them anyway. If they went into this business on that short runway mentality, very few went into it on a long-term mentality like we have from day one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just a great point because it is the wild, wild west right now. We talk to folks all the time. You see people just trying to come in, make a quick buck, maybe cut some corners. And, what I love about our company is the extra steps that we're taking, the extra investments, because we're here for the long term, right? And so you want to be, it's great to be a part of a company that's looking out, has some vision, looks to the long term. And it's, of course we want to be profitable, right? But we want to do it the right way. And I know that was a big thing for you, Dr. Patel.
Sure. And you have to understand what happens with regulations. You get consolidation. What happens with consolidation? You get big fish always eating little fish, right? So your Coca-Colas of the world, your Pepsi-Cos of the world, your whoever of the world are going to tap into this industry because they're going to go ahead and say, well, if people can go get soda with CBD that's not Coca-Cola, then I want it. And the Cokes and the large corporations of the world are going to jump in, but they're going to jump in when the regulations occur. And what are they going to do? They're going to look for companies that are structured correctly, that have followed the regulations from day one, and use them as the template to scale. And that's what we've done. We've created that footprint for them to say, hey, if I'm going to get into this industry now, why start from the bottom step and put this together when company X has already done a lot of the blueprint for me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have a scalable model they can already tap into. They don't have to reinvest or start from scratch, right? So that's I think a big deal. So a couple of just health questions that, as far as products and different conditions out there. So which product do the docs believe is best suited for use for someone suffering from depression? I'll go ahead and throw that out to both of you guys. Dr. Jasani, you want to?
Probably the balance pill, but what you have to understand is depression is a wide spectrum. If you have real clinical psychiatrically diagnosed major depression, you need to see your psychiatrist and you need to be on appropriate behavioral therapy and the right medicine. We're not telling people who have depression and schizophrenia and real psychiatric diagnoses to stop their meds and get on CBD. That would be inappropriate. That is where you're seeing people cross the line and they're trying to market their products, and that I wouldn't do. Now, if you have mild stress, mild anxiety, maybe you feel down and you're not qualified to be a diagnosis of depression, yeah, you can try these. These are plant-based supplements and they're there for general well-being. That I would say would be the balance pills probably. That would be your best bet to start with. Give them a week to 2 weeks to kind of build up in the blood.
Okay, perfect. I don't know, Dr. Patel, do you have any?
Yeah, I agree with Nick, right? So you have to find the underlying cause of the disease, right? And the disease state. What is it? Is it too many stressors? Is it lack of sleep? Is it, dealing with whatever? And I think you have to get to the crux of that. So you have to try behavioral therapy. Obviously, you have to follow if you do see a psychiatrist, and then use these compounds as a tertiary methodology on symptom relief, right? So yes, the capsule actually is probably the most beneficial Now, someone's going to start taking the balance capsule. They're going to take it for 2 weeks or 4 weeks. They're going to be like, well, I didn't feel anything different. It's not like a miracle pill that you take and you miraculously feel better. You have to take it to build up. And then when you're going to actually realize, hey, this thing was actually making a little difference in my day-to-day functionality.
Okay, perfect. And then, of course, there was another question regarding schizophrenia. I know Dr. Jasani touched on it there. Same thing, right? So it's not a cure-all, but probably the balanced gel cap would be the starter for someone maybe wanting to supplement.
Yeah,
and then see how.
Real psychiatric diagnosis. So you do need some guidance with that.
Okay. All right. If y'all could speak to, I know one of the things that we like to differentiate, and we've talked about the certificate of analysis is a big deal, but if you could talk about the percentages, I know Barry talks about this a lot. There's certain percentages that most products have when it comes to the amount of CBD that is in there. I know we're just referencing our balanced gel cap, but the percentages that it has compared to other products out there. If y'all want to go ahead and maybe touch on that.
You're probably, I mean, it's just a milligram dosing, and that you would make, based on what we would ask the manufacturers to do. So really it depends on when you're cultivating these products, you're cultivating them, you're growing them, and then you're processing them and concentrating them. Then you can put them into different mediums with that oil or whatever medium you use to get the right milligrams in the product. So if you look, our products vary. And just like the oil for sleep, you can take one dropper that should be about 30 mils or 30 milligrams. You can start with a half. So you would have to really look at the back. You have to look at a competing product. You have to cross compare the amount of milligrams is in the bottle plus how much is coming in each dose.
Okay. All righty. And I think the last question, again, if anybody has a question here, I'll maybe at the end, you can text it to whoever invited you to the call, or you can text me directly at 713-299-1935. I'll just throw that out there. But the final question is basically showing the difference or determining the difference between an isolate and a full spectrum. If Dr. Patel, I'll throw that out to you, what that would be.
Yeah, so like Dr. Jasani said, these plants have multiple components to them, right? So isolate is just pure CBD. There is no terpene involved. So you have different components. You have isolate, you have full spectrum, you have broad spectrum. And all of those are individualized. So isolate is just CBD. You have full spectrum that does have, the component of terpene. You have broad spectrum that has terpenes as well as THC. So that's how they differentiate it. But, I think that is a really basic way of differentiating it. I think what you're going to see, and Nick can speak to this, they're going to probably utilize different modality components and guidelines on how to put nomenclature to these compounds. And I know you sent me that article, I think probably 6 months ago or something, Nick, that how they'll get labeled.
Exactly, that's correct. You're not going to hear indicas and sativas and all things when you hear about THC. It's going to be down to the chemovar, which is the chemical components of each plant and strain. A certain one with the right amounts of THC, CBD, APN, and certain terpenes is a certain specific fingerprint. And then the next plant will have another different level of micrine, pinylene, which are terpenes, along with CBD and THC. You can begin to see each fingerprint is different. And then you can tie those to how they make you feel, because they make you feel different. Some of them may be more analgesic, but giving you more sedation. Other ones may give you more energy but give you more concentration. This is where I think you are going to start to see the science move.
Okay. All righty. Well, that's all that we have in the form of questions. I don't know, Barry, if you want to make any final comments. I know we want to be respectful of everybody's time. We're getting close to about 40 minutes here. Any final comments at all, Barry?
No, the only thing I would say is that, this groundwork that we've laid with Wellness Biosciences with respect to the development of our CBD products has helped us a lot as we're moving also into our biologics, right? The attention to detail. And I think we're taking much of the same approach with respect to what we've done in WBRx with our wellness-based consumables and how we're moving into biologics. And I say that because it's a learning ground. It's not something that a lot of other companies out there that I know of are developing products with physicians, patients in mind. And so if you can maintain that standard, I think it's the highest standard. And now we just look to continue to add more products into that SKU set, but still maintain that standard. So that's all I would add, Mitchell.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for those final comments. What I will say is we appreciate, as always, Dr. Patel, Dr. Jasani. They just do such a fantastic job of talking about CBD, its effects, how it really, the science behind it. So we appreciate that, them leading the charge, and just throwing out for everybody here on the call is that we're going to actually have an event at our corporate office here on August the 16th. It's going to be from 6 to 8 p.m. So definitely want to invite everyone out for that. We'll have some food, have some drinks. Dr. Patel, Dr. Jasani, as well as another gentleman from a new lab that we're going to represent with a new product that we're going to launch that we're super excited about. So again, that's going to be August the 16th there at the McCarthy in the Memorial City area. So with that, everybody have a great rest of the night. Thank you for your time. God bless, and we'll see you at the next event. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Ox. Appreciate you guys very much. Thanks, Mitchell.